Hey Mac,
What up?
what's up, dog?
And how are ya?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Good to see you live.
Good to see you, and good to see you still got that tan, even though you're out of the old Key West.
Oh, we're working on it. It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder here.
Where'd you go?
South Carolina.
Oh,
Yeah, big change.
what made you decide to leave the Keys?
Well, we were kind of looking, loosely, and then Michelle
Yeah,
got a job offer. So we
there you
left.
go.
Yeah, it was a big change, a lot harder than I think I thought. Because I was there for about 22 years.
Yeah, I know. You were like Miss Key West.
Yes. Yeah.
How was that transition like because you had a lot of in-person clients too, right?
I did. So that was the tough part, leaving them, starting over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was very, very, very challenging. So that's sort of where I started pivoting online a little bit because my Key West clients wanted to stay with me. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I'll, do your training and nutrition
Yeah.
online. Kind of slowly started that way. And
Yeah.
then got to, well, we actually first went to Sarasota area for a
Oh,
year.
nice.
And then that didn't really work out, and then her job took us here.
Mm,
So I was there for a year, and I got more in-person clients slowly but surely. But then I started, just kind of getting more and more online. And
yeah.
yeah,
Wow. Pretty
now I'm
crazy.
fully remote. Yeah.
I know. How do you like it? Because I remember when I transitioned to all online, I liked it at first. I was like, oh, all this time. I don't have to be here when this client has their session, this client has their session. And then like a year or two in, I was like, I kind of miss in-person training a little bit. So I got back into it more when I moved
Yeah.
to San Diego.
Yeah, same. I mean, there's some times where I do miss, the connections
Yeah.
in person, but right now I'm still kind of
Yeah.
enjoying it
Yeah.
because it's nice to be home with the dogs and like,
Uh-huh.
make my own schedule, go to the gym early, and
Yeah.
then kind of be in and out. I got a walking pad, so I'm all set.
Wow, you're all in.
Yep, I'm in.
I
But
love it.
I'm working with Beth now.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, so that's been really awesome. Yeah,
good. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Awesome. And well, I got a shit ton of questions I want to ask you because I think one, you have a cool history, we have a cool history,
Mhm.
and it's been really amazing to see sort of what from when I knew you to how you've taken your education and your really deep dived into
Mhm.
training and programming and all of that. I think that's been the coolest part because I
Yeah.
remember even when, we were coaching, you were
Uh-huh.
so fascinated into like the whys of programming and why we're doing this, why like how does this involve, how do we progress from this? And I think
Yeah.
it's like that passion from early on from just coaching you. I think just I saw that where you're just like I'm fucking going all in on this shit because
Yeah,
it like it
totally.
really was passionate. So what kind of I guess what got you into I guess the like learning and deep diving more about like strength training and then also, what you're really focusing on now?
I mean, I think when I started with you, which you were such a great first coach for me, you were my first coach, right?
Wow.
Yeah, with you, like kind of doing the thing that now I'm like my clients are kind of
Yeah.
doing. Training really hard, 5, 6 days, low calories, like scared to kind of increase food,
Hmm.
like kind of just spinning your wheels, right? It's like,
Yeah.
how do I get to this place I want to go? Like, how do I get jacked? How do I do
Right.
this? 'Cause I thought I'm doing, more, not eating enough. And then the
Yep.
first thing you did, we're like, boom, we're raising
Yeah.
calories. and
Yeah.
you're training only 4 days. That was
Hmm.
like the two things you did right out of the gate. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. And then I remember telling Michelle like how she's like, just trust Ryan, like
Yeah.
he knows what's up, like you're in, like this is something you haven't tried.
Yeah.
Open your mind. And I'm like,
Hmm.
you're right. And that's actually what I tell my clients now, like
Yeah.
open mind, like this is something you're not used to doing, but it's something probably the one thing you haven't done. And
Mm,
sure enough,
so
like
true.
each week you kept like raising my calories. And before I knew it, I was eating like, 2,100 calories with this huge jump.
Yeah.
Felt so good, and then like we just kind of rolled with that and just got
Hmm.
stronger and I felt so much better. So I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And then
Yeah.
eventually went into a surplus. I think right when
Yeah.
we kind of ended together and then I was like, we remember we eloped. You were the only one that knew.
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, so then after that I went into a surplus and then
Yeah.
did a photo shoot. So like kind of
Yeah. You got
leaned out. So I learned a
ripped.
lot in that process. I mean,
Yeah.
starting with you and then kind of gaining and
Yeah.
then doing this aggressive photo shoot like prep.
Yeah.
And then just kind of deep dive from there. Like I found out about N1 education. So
Hmm.
I went to my first practical that summer, got was very overwhelmed. It's very intense. It's awesome, but very humbling. Like you think
Mm.
you know a lot, and then you go to one of those things, and it's
Yeah.
next level,
Oh,
spectacular.
absolutely.
I was like, wow, it just felt like a beginner again. So
Hmm.
I just kind of deep dived more and more into that and just the education part. And I ended up meeting Adam. He's one of the coaches there. So he's now my coach and
Wow.
mentor. I do a mentorship with him ongoing.
That's
So
amazing.
again, last summer to another practical, and I was like,
Wow.
okay, I've already gone once. Like, now I've been working with Adam for a year. I'm gonna go again. Still felt like a beginner.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a lot, yeah. But
Yeah. It's
the
humbling.
education part, yeah, you just never stop learning, and
Hmm.
there's just always more to learn, more research is coming out. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think it's one of those things where and I think as a coach, right? Because we both coach a bunch of clients, you go in thinking like I should have some idea, right? Of like baseline of what they're talking about. But then I think that's when you realize there's layers to this shit, right? There's like there's like I know this, but oh, we're going deep, 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 deep
Yeah,
into the whys and the hows, right? And that does feel very intimidating as a coach.
very much so. And then on top of it all, you're in a room of fitness professionals
Yeah.
training. And like also another humbling thing that we all agreed on was like you think you train hard and then you go to one of those things and they're really pushing you and you have a room of people like cheering you on the hack
Yeah.
squat, like true muscle failure. Like if you thought
Right.
you'd hit it before, you might not have if you go to one of
Yeah.
those things. So
Right.
very, very humbling, but I just, was like so hungry to learn and like
Yeah.
understand the stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just been awesome. It's sort of like a hobby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
I think like that's why I think your journey is very relatable because you had the sort of low calorie eating lifestyle. You had like the party lifestyle at one point, and then you had that transition into maintenance, right? Which was, like you said, very scary at first and reducing the amount of days that you're actually, strength training, all that stuff. So that's very scary to people who have only known 6 days a week or more, or anything like that, right? More is better, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and then I think the transition into a surplus is also very humbling too, right?
Okay.
What was
That
your
that was that was mentally probably the toughest
how
thing.
so?
Just because I was also a trainer in the gym, so I'm like in
Yeah.
the gym scene all day and then just kind of gaining. I think I gained about 12 pounds.
Hmm.
Probably went a little bit too hard on the surplus before I like really knew, I wouldn't probably go that hard now.
Right.
You don't really need to be that, aggressive on the
Right.
surplus. It was just like mentally, like, aesthetics wise, like wasn't
Hmm.
where I wanted to be, but it did pay off when I did my photo shoot. So that was
Yeah.
fun.
Fucking
But,
ripped.
yeah, but again, that's kind of the lifestyle. I also
Yeah.
have realized that I don't want to live in
Hmm.
either. I've done a few cuts since then, and they've been shorter, and I'm like, I think I'm kind of done. Just like
Yeah.
maintenance is life.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so true. I remember because you do, I think that's one of the things that just happens when you go into a surplus is you're gonna look a little fluffy, right? I think that's very, very normal and it's what a lot of people are scared of.
Yeah.
But it is like a mental mind fuck. I remember, I've done a few bulks and like I look back at photos now, I'm like, oh, a lot of weight on this small guy's posture, right? Like that's a lot of
Totally.
weight. But
Yeah.
and it's one of those things too where you do the cuts, right? So you do the bulks, you do the cuts, you do the bulks, you do the cuts, but you do get to that place where you're just like, I just want to fucking live and like not be in a constant bulk or cut cycle.
exactly. Just kind of living. I want to
Hmm.
just like have a cereal and not have to like think about, you know,
Yeah.
what should I like just, like living life
Hmm.
and going out to eat, not having to like, worry so much about that. Like when should we go out to eat? Like, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, just eating. That's kind of where I'm at now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great place to be. I mean, it means, and I think maintenance, when people actually do all these things, it really hits, right? It's like this is maintenance. Like maintenance is defining lifestyle, behaviors, going out to eat and not feeling like you need to work your way around things, right? I think it makes a huge difference.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah. The big thing I think, like I said, because I've seen you really deep dive into your education about exercise and strength training, and I just even your eyes like lighting up. You're like, yeah, I love that. So could you define for people first what is like N1, the courses you were doing, and then also like define what biomechanics maybe means for somebody who's like a general pop person?
Yeah. N1 is really specific on training at different muscle lengths. Like basically the biomechanics thing is like force. How do your muscle tissues respond to force? You think
Mm,
about shorten muscle positions, lengthen muscles, and like what does that mean really in a hypertrophy world? So
mm,
just kind of learning different techniques. I mean, they're really big on technique, effort. Those are like the two main things that you'll kind of
mm,
learn there. So you can work with any equipment you have and you can make things work, but kind of knowing the basic principles of what you're trying to target, and what that looks like. Are you trying to target, for hypertrophy wise, you really want to go, lengthened more so than shortened. And again,
mm,
there's reasonings for all that, but really the biomechanics is, like I said, just kind of force and how your body and tissue are responding to that, more or less,
mm.
to be
Okay.
simple.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's the sort of where the amount of force you're putting on your body meets range of motion and the amount of exertion you're putting into that exercise, right? To target something very specific.
So exactly, very specific. And that's where they're, like as far as like, do I use a lot of that stuff for Gen Pop people? No.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it's really great to have the knowledge.
Yeah.
Like they're
Absolutely.
very specific on like what fiber of the
Yeah.
glute you're targeting. Like, is this the
Yeah.
iliac division? Is it the glute medius? And it's very,
Yeah.
very specific. And
Hmm.
it's great to know that. But
Yeah.
do I use that with, Betty? No.
Yeah.
No. But
Betty, what the fuck
where
you doing here?
yeah, exactly. This is kind of where it turns into like more of a hobby,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah.
And like it's great to have because it's also my career, but
Yeah,
it's more just
absolutely.
like fun to learn that. And I think for a while I was trying to fit into like knowing all of it. That's why I'm,
Mm,
studying so hard, but
yeah,
you never will know all of it, first of all.
yeah.
And do I need it? No, most likely not for most
Yeah,
people,
right,
unless you're a competitor and like you're really trying to get super specific. But
right.
it's fun to play around. It's fun to learn, and
Hmm.
I just enjoy it. So
Yeah. Well, I think it is. I think it, and it is a very, like we said, it's like very like Inception. You're going through like through the layers and layers and layers to get to
right.
the very specific things. How, I guess because you have like your training before that was Gen Pop, right? And you said you have a lot of clients right now who are Gen Pop. How do you translate, the very specifics of that training style to almost, I guess, maybe simplify to somebody who's Gen Pop and their training and that style?
I think just keeping it simpler and what you're calling the exercise. I think I
Mm.
started like filming myself and I was like, here's an iliac, lengthened kickback. And then I
Hmm.
would send that to a client and they're like, wait, what? So you
Right.
just like, okay, this is a glute kickback that we're
There you
doing.
go.
Yeah, just kind
Right.
of keeping it in simpler terms,
Yeah.
uh, for sure. And that's it. Simpler
Hmm.
is better. Michelle, my wife, always reminds me like not everybody's like that into this stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's simple. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
very true. Especially working with more and more, Gen Pop these days.
Yeah.
Like they just want simple stuff. Let me
Hmm.
know what I'm targeting. Cool. This is for my thigh. You're, you
Hmm.
know Doesn't have to be a quad biased, split squat with,
Right.
a quarter rep. Like it just got
Hmm.
simple. So yeah, just keeping it simple, just like
Yeah.
everything, really.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's probably what makes you a great teacher too, is if you are able to translate the overly complicated to the overly simple. I think that's what makes the best teachers slash coaches, right? I think if you think of any subject you were fascinated with in school or hobbies or anything like that, is usually the people teaching you said it in a way that just kind of clicked for you and
Absolutely.
and allowed you to sort of be like, oh, that's
Yes.
it's a glute kickback. Amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, there's one example that Michelle and I were cooking one day, and she's like, we were making a stir fry, and she's
Hmm.
like, you gotta keep stirring it.
Yeah.
Stir fry. And I was like, oh, like it
Whoa.
just kind of like clicked in, like, you're right. Like something like that, that like will stick.
Dude, you just fucked me up with that.
So we call it
Damn
like,
it,
it's always
Michelle.
like a stir fry moment. Like that's,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, you just brain blasted me too.
Right? I never was like, oh yeah, I guess.
Yeah, holy shit. I think, well, that's the episode. No.
Yeah, right? Stir
That's
fry moment.
amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Holy shit.
But yeah,
Um,
definitely being able to, talk to people in a way that they understand, I
yeah,
think is huge.
yeah,
And not getting so fancy with, you know, the names of muscle fibers and
yeah.
things. Nobody cares. Unless
Unless they care, right?
yeah,
It's so true. It's so
yeah,
true. I think so because I like the for the audience the ability to allow them to learn from such an overly complicated topic. How I guess what is your and we can go into the nutrition side, we can go into the actual hypertrophy side too. But what is like your from your experience and your knowledge, what is that muscle building 101 like formula? Like if someone's trying to build muscle, right? We often hear like, yeah, I know you're at your face. Oh
mhm,
shit. It's because it's like a overcomplicated question that can't be like simply answered, right? So I think what would be like your muscle building 101 formula? And maybe I'll leave you that and we'll talk from there.
right. Yeah, that's a loaded question. But
Yes.
I would say hypertrophy training.
Hmm.
I would periodize that for sure. So that's another great thing that N1 has given me in my mentorship is like learning how to periodize different types of hypertrophy. So if
Yeah.
you think of hypertrophy on like a continuum, it's kind of in the middle. You've got more of like a metabolic side, you've got more of a strength side, and then like so you can kind of shuttle programs like in between. So kind
Mm,
of as hypertrophy being the main goal. So
right.
that's I do it with clients. So if they want to build, I will definitely bring them into a maintenance for sure.
Hmm.
Maybe even a tiny little 5% surplus,
Yeah.
depending. And then put them through hypertrophy. Usually, like maybe I would start with something like depending on the person, but
Hmm.
a descending rep, ascending load. So 15, 12, 10, 8 as like a rep scheme and
Mm,
kind of get a lot of volume. And then maybe the next month go into more of like the metabolic side, like
mm,
systemic type programming where you're moving a little bit quicker, resting 30 seconds. So doing that for
mm,
a couple weeks to a month, and then maybe moving into more of the strength side where you're going a little bit lower reps. So just
mm.
kind of shuttling through the different phases
Yeah.
and really nice result as long as you are feeding the machine along the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then just being patient.
Yeah.
Time, time, time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think if we break that down, right? So you broke it down into nutrition, you broke it down into workout periodization, right? So different phases of your workout plans, and then you broke it down into the actual mental side, which is like the patience aspect. So in terms of like the nutritional aspect, can you touch on a little bit the importance of why maintenance or a slight surplus is beneficial as opposed to a lot of people when they start, they're like, I want to lose weight and I want to build muscle, right? That's like the most common want from somebody. I think a lot of people listen to this. That's probably what they want too. So why maintenance or a slight surplus from a nutritional standpoint?
Well, me, if depending where they're coming from, of course.
Yeah.
I would start working your way up towards maintenance because that's
Mm-hmm.
going to give you the energy. That's going to
Mm-hmm.
give you the materials to build the house, right?
Mm.
Unless you're a brand new, it's going to be really hard to build, in a deficit or coming from a negative place of
Yeah.
calories. So, first of all, I always use that. It's like we need the materials to build the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just gonna, especially around the workouts is really kind of what I've been taught is to like kind of feed the workouts. Carbs and protein pre and post is really important. I mean, obviously Gen Pop, as long as you're hitting your targets throughout the day, but
Yeah.
putting a little more emphasis on the nutrition around the workouts. So you want to kind of like feed the machine.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just like so having the energy and then again the materials to build the house. And then
Mm.
muscle takes time. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like a snail's pace. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the hard part is people expect to see these results, like
Yeah.
fast and like obviously the longer you're training, the harder it gets and the
Right.
slower it gets.
Right. So true.
So it's just, yeah, the mental piece is so I'm always like just enjoy a life at maintenance and just train really hard. You've got the energy,
Mm-hmm.
the fuel, like
Yeah.
use it towards the workouts and
Yeah.
watch that loss become a byproduct.
Right. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah,
I
that's
th
kind of what I always say.
I think it's funny too because I always think like people who are they're like, oh, like you look amazing, blah blah. And it's like I've been lifting since I was 13. It's like and I only look like this, right? It's
Right,
like
right, right.
it's fucking
Exactly.
hard.
Only, yes.
Right, right, right.
I
Even though
know.
like again, like we're in good shape and we like how we look. I think it's like people look at I think physiques online and all these things. They're like, oh, like 6 months. Like it's like no, these people have been like as I said, I've been doing it since I was 13. How long have you been strength training for?
Yeah, like maybe 18, 17, 18.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So a
And
good,
then there's subsection years where you're like, and then I actually started training the right way, like for
right.
4 or 5 years.
Not just like throwing spaghetti at the wall, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
1000%. So I
yeah.
guess in terms of like the workout aspect, right? Because you talked about like different periodizations
Hmm.
for building muscle, right? You talked about more of like a hypertrophy phase, then you talked about like a metabolic phase, and then more of like a strength phase. What is sort of the importance of doing different like rep ranges or like you said more volume in first phase and maybe lower volume in the last phase, like what is the importance of um varying it from phase to phase?
Well, I think because your body adapts. Obviously, like you should be doing somewhat of the same exercises,
Hmm.
but hitting them with different rep ranges, different rest intervals
Hmm.
will help your body to not adapt. So, kind of not keep it guessing, but kind of like keep it guessing.
Yeah, right.
Basically. So
Yeah.
yeah, you just like the different stimulus will, improve your overall. So like 1 month you're training like hypertrophy and then you
Hmm.
take a little break and go more into strength and you're kind of training like the neurological side. And you might
Mm,
go more to like a metabolic
yeah.
where you're like less rest, which will eventually make you better for that, when you come back to that middle like hypertrophy phase, which will
Yeah.
eventually be better for that strength. But it just kind of like you can just
Mm,
keep rotating through
yeah.
and
Yeah.
like working different like energy systems really more or
Yeah.
less with
Yeah.
kind of the same overarching goal like
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
have to kind of know what your goal is. I think kind of zoom out and be like
Yeah.
what do I really want? Do I really want to train for strength? Do I just want to get strong as fuck?
Yeah.
Do I want to like grow muscle tissue and get strong? So I feel like hypertrophy is kind of like the best of all worlds, right?
Mm,
You get both goals. Really, you can get really strong, you can get jacked. I mean, it's
yeah.
kind of everything kind of like fits under that little umbrella.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Well, I
Yeah.
think and I kind of like how you touched on it because I think too many people sort of stay in those same rep ranges their whole life, right? Like it's either the crowd that's like I'm gonna do 15 to 30 reps, right? Or it's the crowd where it's like I'm only doing 3 to 5 reps, like, and then there's a crowd who is only taking 30-second rests in between sets,
Yeah.
right? So I guess you touched on it too, like the stimulus for those different phases is really important because you are getting a lot of benefits from each phase, right? Yeah.
one kind of like helps set the stage for the next. You
Mm,
might not feel like that in the moment, but like you're doing like a metabolic phase where you are resting like shorter intervals, which will eventually help your recovery, so that
mm,
when you do go into like a strength or a hypertrophy phase, like you'll be able to
yeah.
recover quicker, so then you can lift heavier. So just they all kind of like blend,
Yeah.
bounce off each other more or less, I think.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
it's
think,
fun. And like, that's what keeps it a little bit exciting also.
yeah.
Because if you were just kind of doing the same 8 to 10 reps
Hmm.
every month to month to month, like that kind of gets stale.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we should stick with the same things, but
Yep.
a little bit of variety is nice, like for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. Like we all like Ritz crackers, but you throw a little peanut butter on there, it's a game changer.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
And I like how you said that too, because I think like they do play a role for each other, right? Like you said, like the higher volume phase is going to help you maybe improve technique a little bit more, right? It's gonna help you build maybe your recovery a little more, and then you have the metabolic phase, which you said really focuses on the recovery aspect, especially when you go into the heavier strength training sessions when you're hitting like the 3 to 5 rep ranges, and it's
Yeah.
really heavy, intense pull, really, anaerobic, and that because you had the shorter recovery in the previous phase, your body recovers quicker in between sets.
No, you nailed it. Yes.
Let's go.
Yeah. I mean,
See?
for sure. That's it. So yeah, it's like it's fun because like you'll do like I said that metabolic phase, and then after a couple weeks, like, all right, I'm ready to like lift again. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
metabolic, you're resting 30, 45 seconds. Then it's like, okay, I'm ready to like, but
Yeah.
then when you're in, the hypertrophy, like 8 to 10,
Yeah.
maybe like a descending rep, like 12, 10, 8, 6, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Okay, maybe I'm ready for some strength. So, but
Yeah.
like all kind of working together,
Yeah.
same goal.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun to kind of zoom out for a year, and then you can also match, your nutrition alongside, which
Hmm.
whatever phase you're in.
Yeah.
So, like, depending again on your overall goal, if it's something like fat loss,
Yeah.
metabolic is always good because you're moving quick.
Right.
And then you go if you want to go into maintenance, like hypertrophy, like I said, is always great for maintenance.
Yeah.
Strength, believe it or not, a deficit works really well in strength as long as
Mm.
you're eating the workout.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
so
definitely a misconception, right? When everybody thinks they're starting a cut or something like that, they're like losing all my strength, losing all my gains, right?
yeah, yeah, no. So yeah, I think because like what I learned through my mentorship is Adam always says, because when you think of like hypertrophy, it's usually like a little more volume than strength, right?
Yeah.
So you think of every time your muscle contracts, you're like carb, carb, carb.
Yeah.
And then you go into something like strength where you're not having as many contractions, so you can actually get away with being a little lighter on the calories.
Mm.
So
That's a great point, and usually longer
yeah,
rest times too.
yeah, exactly. So you can recover. So actually, a deficit works really well in a strength block.
I
And it's
love
like,
that way you phrase. That's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
mhm.
Ooh, okay. Very good. Very
Yeah,
good.
carb, 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 right?
I
Stir
love
fry
that.
moment.
Stir fry, baby.
Yeah,
What is your thoughts on, I guess, how important is, because you did talk about range of motion, you talked about volume. I guess how and I don't know if we talked about tempo. How important are things like volume, range of motion, and tempo when it does come to building muscle, if
very.
they are?
Yeah. Yes, very important. I mean, I think technique is probably the best thing you can dial in because
Mm,
as you're training, you're not going to be able to move up weight every week,
yeah,
right? So you kind of reach like a point where that might come to a halt.
yeah.
So focusing on tempo and technique is everything, right? So like each week you can improve your technique. You can work on the tempo. I always prescribe, a tempo, most likely, a 3 second lowering, but
Hmm.
actually following through with that because most people don't do that either. They kind of
Yeah.
let gravity take over. When you really dial that in,
Yeah.
I mean, it can change an exercise.
Big
So,
time.
yes.
Yeah, it really, you're kind of an asshole if you're a coach you throw in eccentrics, but it's so helpful.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is good because it makes you
Yes.
connect with the movement,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the beginning. I love teaching it right out of the gate. Like this
Yeah.
is how you're gonna lower. This is, 3 seconds, count in your head, 3, 2, 1. It's just like a great
Mm-hmm.
habit to get into out of the gate.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I think very important, all
Mm-hmm.
of it. All of
Yeah.
it. And volume, I mean, obviously dependent.
Yeah.
The
For
more
sure.
trained you are, probably the more volume you're gonna need. So
Mm.
that's that.
Yeah.
And also depending, like, certain people want certain body parts to come up, so you can put a little more attention there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think that's true. I think I because I know for myself, if I'm doing, for example, like Jordan's workouts, like inner circle workouts, they're very compound movement based, right? They're gonna touch on a little bit of everything. And then I usually throw a little bit more arms in or something like
right. Exactly.
that.
Yes.
Just for me.
Really. Yep. Because you gotta kind of put it where you want to grow.
Right.
While we can
Absolutely.
target, it's still fun to, train. You gotta train what you enjoy also.
Yeah. How do you, because I talked to Jordan Lips last week, and I think he's very into N1 as well.
Mhm.
Um, how do you feel about like, you're doing a program and all that stuff and you know, maybe one day just going into a gym and sort of just doing what you want that day? Like what are your thoughts on like a maybe like a playground day as he phrased it?
I mean, I personally probably wouldn't do that, but
Mm,
I think it's great if it's like going to keep things a little bit exciting
yeah.
for a client.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anything's wrong with that. Like, I think some people get like they have to be so by the book and so perfect.
Right.
But no, I mean, I pretty much train for five days right now. So I stay on my program, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important if you're getting like stale or just
Yeah.
not enjoying it, because that's so much of it is the
Mm-hmm.
enjoyment factor.
Yeah.
You have to want to do it.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think
Yeah,
I think we get a lot of people get lost in the sauce sometimes too when it's like, because same thing, if you're tracking your calories very strictly, you're being very dedicated to it, you don't take a diet break or anything like that, like adherence is eventually going to go down, right? So I think same with working out. I think a lot of us got into working out because of the fun of it, right? The enjoyment of it, where you're just like, this is great. Like my heart's moving. Like I feel a little bit stronger. This is the new machine right here. Let me try this out. Let me try it. It's like a buffet, right? You go into
yeah,
somewhere
yeah.
new. So I do think, I think for sure, I think there's, and it's all like I think everything, any good coach can say it depends, right? Because it's always depends on the person and what their goal is and their mindset and their adherence at the time, right? So it's, if you're somebody who is wants the gains but knows, hey, I need to have a little bit of a break every now and then in order for me to continue on this process and this journey, then definitely have like a playground day where you're just trying new shit or doing a group class, right? But also, if you're a person who has a dedicated goal, like you said, a lot of your athletes who like have hypertrophy goals or they're competing in something, then you're gonna want to stick to the program longer, right?
Exactly, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but it is always fun. Like if you travel to go to a gym
Yeah.
and like go off program, try new stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Definitely. I
Oh
think
yeah. I think I went to a gym once and they had this booty thing. And it was just like I felt like a fish out of water because I was like, I don't know how this works.
right.
But it lit my butt up like a Christmas tree, I'll tell you
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's fun to find like a cool gym with like,
Yeah.
an old school raw kind of gym.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in terms of, so we talked about like muscle building 101 formula, how
Mhm.
it's very nutrition specific and how periodizing your workouts is important, to go in different rep ranges and to focus on, the recovery aspects so you can improve your strength aspect and all of that.
Mhm.
What do you think are the biggest misconceptions you typically see or that you've maybe experienced yourself when it comes to strength training, right? Like what do people tend to assume they should feel after a workout or anything like that? Like what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about building muscle and workouts in general?
I mean, I think a big thing, which I'm sure you see too, is I'm not sore.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't really sore, so I'm not sure, if I'm training right. And
Hmm.
That's probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
Um, and I think just nothing's happening, muscle wise. Like, I don't know what people, I think it just false expectations about what
Mm,
should be happening and how fast. But
right.
I say muscle soreness, and like, you're probably going to be sore in the beginning, like a little bit, in
Yep.
the first week of something new. And then that kind of goes away because your body
Mm,
adapts.
yeah.
So, yeah, I would say soreness for sure. Yeah.
Soreness, absolutely not. It's
Yeah.
funny because I got a tetanus shot yesterday.
Huh?
So my I got a tetanus shot yesterday, so my left arm is like sore as hell. So I was just
Yeah.
like, oh, it's and you're and if like someone generally you're like, oh, my muscle's gonna grow there, perhaps.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I do think it's true. I think and I think because I think if we all remember our first workout or our first like exercise or group class we ever did, it's like the sort like getting off a toilet that next day, you're like, whew,
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
muscle, baby. That must have been a great workout, right? How do you define, I guess, like what's the norm for somebody? Like what should they experience post workout and especially as they're become less of a workout noob and more of like a more experienced lifter, I guess.
I mean, I think tracking your progress and seeing the kind of, you know, increases you've had, the progressive overload, I think
Mm,
is the best way. Cause again, eventually it's all gonna kind of be the same. You're gonna be using the same weights for a long time, the more
yeah.
advanced, right? So just kind of watching your logbook and writing things down, like as detailed as it is, like shooting for one more, even a half a one if you can, just kind of like keeping track of like those little tiny wins that
Mm,
are very, tiny, but
yeah.
you get more advanced, like, and you can't move up in weight all the time or add more reps for
Mm,
could be a long time. So
yeah.
I think just progressive overload, really. Just, a lot of people don't want to write it down, but it's really important
Yeah. Yeah.
to keep that kind of track because then it
Yeah.
keeps you, it also keeps you a little motivated.
Mm,
Hey, cool, I got 9 reps this week. I got 9.25. Like
yeah.
just things like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's what I
What?
would say. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's important. I think you can also translate that to nutrition too, where it's like the people who never have tracked their food don't understand they always ask why I'm not losing weight or why isn't this working, right? But when you actually track something, in this specific case, your lifts, track the amount of reps you do, right? You track the amount of weight you did with those reps, track the intensity, right? I think that's really important. It's really underrated. And I know you said it's like one of the biggest things when it comes to actually building muscle is your intensity. I guess because I think one of the most common questions, like someone asks, like, how much weight should I use for this exercise? Right? What's your answer to that? Because I know it's like it's so common.
I know it's tough. I mean, obviously, depending who they are, but I
Right.
always done the RPE scale,
Mm,
and I explain that always in my initial, call with them or my first when I give them their first program. Like, this is the scale you want to use, and
mm-hmm.
it's going to tell you how heavy I want you to go, how hard I want you to push. Really,
Mm-hmm.
try to pay attention to that, even though most people don't in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's so important, because you want to leave like 3 reps in the tank. You want to leave two, you want to leave one, you want to fail. So it's
Mm,
really important. So just kind of following that scale, I think it's so key because that will
mm-hmm.
tell you how hard you should be going.
Yeah.
And that will, you decide what weight to pick.
Mm, yeah.
RPE 6 or 7, that still doesn't mean, it's light. Like it's
Right.
still a working set.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a
Yeah.
lot of people think. Oh, well, then I should, grab, the tens instead of the 30s. Like, no, like you want to push it,
Yeah.
you kind of figure out where you're at. It's just
Yeah.
it's a great tool to have, especially
Yeah.
within online space, right? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
there. So,
1000%.
yeah.
What would you say is, I guess, because you did talk about 6 or 7 is good for building muscle. What would you say is like a range somebody should be shooting for from so RPE, rate of perceived exertion, right? So what is the range somebody should be shooting for when it comes to like the RPE scale
For hypertrophy, really?
or for
Just,
hypertrophy related? Yeah.
yeah, I would say 8 for sure.
8.
8, 9
Oh, so
for
you're
all
you're
your weight.
going out.
Yeah, I would say so. for sure. Because you
Yeah.
want to, at least two reps to failure for most sets, and I think you'll
Mm,
see some great progress that way.
yeah, absolutely.
But a
Should,
lot of people don't know what that looks like. So again, it's just a lot
mm,
of trial and error and
yeah.
figure out where would you fail? What does failure look like?
Mm.
So
I guess how would that's a great question. How does failure look like? How would you define it? Like, how would
I,
you describe it to somebody?
I thought I knew what it was until I went to MD.
So they
Yeah,
destroyed me in front of a group of people.
yeah, basically. It's a tough one. I mean, just really till you really can't go anymore. Not just because it's like burning, but like you
Mm,
legit can't go any harder. You can't get
right,
that weight up. You can't, squat that. You can't squat your body up with the bar on your back or whatever.
right,
The
right.
heck. So, it's just, of course, having a spotter, but trying
Yep,
to set out is always good.
right.
Trial and error over the years, I think you kind of figure it out.
Yeah, 1000%.
Yeah.
How does the like should somebody be trying to go to failure every workout and I know you're shaking your head. What are sort of the repercussions? Because I think, people I think failure is a more common niche thing we're hearing right now in the fitness industry. Like you should be going towards failure, all your workouts. Like what are sort of like the repercussions if someone tried to do that like every workout?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's too much. Like, you're just not going to be able to recover from something like that. I mean,
Mm,
it's just too much. So,
yeah.
I would say like a safe bet would be, week one, you're like going RPE, 7, 8, 9, and then maybe you're building up your RPE week to week, but like
Hmm.
having one or two sets, close to failure, I would say.
Mm,
And
yeah.
then maybe in the last week, maybe two sets failure. But
Hmm.
yeah, I wouldn't go more than two sets failure for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
It's too much. Yeah. And you actually, I think research is coming out that you actually don't need as much
I
as
saw
they.
that.
Yeah. So I think like eights are pretty solid,
Hmm.
for
Yeah, like
muscle
a
growth.
few reps in reserve.
Mhm. But I mean, it's just like that's the thing is like it's always changing. So
Yep.
I would just say keep it safe and RP 8, 9, push
Yeah.
hard so you have one or two left and
Yeah.
just try to progress off that. It's kind of just the safe bet, I think.
Yeah. And I think you kind of touched on something that we haven't talked about yet, and you mentioned recovery, right? So how important is recovery for building muscle? And also, I guess maybe in your own experience, what does recovery look like for someone who's trying to build muscle, and maybe what does your like recovery routine kind of look like?
Um, I mean, sleep. Sleep
Yeah.
is huge, right? Because that's where kind of the stuff happens. Like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people think you're growing muscle in the gym, and
Yep.
no, it's not. It's what you're doing outside of the gym and sleeping. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, as long as you have your sleep, dialed in.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever that looks like for you, which
Mm-hmm.
usually 7, 8 hours is probably ideal for most people.
Mm-hmm.
And not training day to day, back to back.
Mm. Oh, okay.
Taking yeah, definitely taking some time. I mean, obviously you could do like an upper lower back to
Right.
back, but I wouldn't go do 2 leg days. I think if you are able to do that, then you might want to look at how hard you're training.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be and just walking, keeping your steps up. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to be doing the endless cardio. So kind
Yeah.
of that also helps with recovery, especially
Yep.
after leg days and things. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, but
Well, I think
that's my recovery. I mean,
yeah.
is like just walking, trying to sleep,
Yep.
eating good foods,
Mm-hmm.
micronutrients, hitting
Yeah.
the carbs, doing the thing.
Yeah. I think that is it's probably one of the most underrated things is sleep, right? Because I think everybody always thinks like, oh, like I'm gonna go super hard in the gym and then I should expect to see all these gains, right? But it's like you're tearing your shit up in the gym, but what you do once you leave the gym might be more important than the actual strength training session, right?
Yeah, it's 100%. Like
Yeah.
we're recovering. That's when everything's repairing and growing.
Hmm.
So yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
having that mindset of like waking up at 5 a.m. probably right before I started coaching with you.
Yeah.
Going to do like a hit workout before I started my day. And then then I was gonna
Yeah.
lift later and like, sacrificing sleep and again, spinning
Mm-hmm.
my wheel, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sleep. It's a lot of people are better off just sleeping in a little bit and getting
Mm,
that, prioritizing that rather than getting up to do something like a run or
yeah.
just as important.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, like I said, I don't think that's talked about enough because I think there's so much focus on, I mean, literally everything we just talked about, like this first 45 minutes was like,
Yeah.
strength and nutrition, all these things, but it's like sleep and, what you're doing. And I think another thing you touched on too is, your workout split, how important your workout split is to facilitating your muscle growth, right? So you kind of touched on how you can do, antagonist muscle groups back to back, but it would sort of, maybe harm progress or it's a sign that you're not intense enough with your
Mhm.
workouts. So I guess what's like if we were to paint a picture for somebody, let's say someone who's working out 3 days a week and somebody's working out 4 days a week, what's like a ideal muscle split look like so that it facilitates their muscle growth but also their recovery?
I would say in a perfect world, probably like upper lower, and
Mm,
a 3 day, depending on the person, but I'd say upper lower full
mm,
would be my go-to.
yeah,
If there's total beginners, that you could do three full body if it's
yeah,
space. Um, but that would be ideal, I think. Having
mm,
the upper lower, then you could go like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and be
yeah,
done. So, and
yeah,
that gives you a lot of space between your two lower days. So that's
mm,
what I would say for sure.
yeah. And then and we'll wrap up soon, but I'm just getting all these questions now because we also touched on, so now that we're on recovery, right? We're talking about recovery for, post workouts, all this stuff. How important is the actual recovery time in between exercises?
Again, depending on like what you're going for,
Yeah.
but just talking like muscle building, it is important because you want to rest enough that you're going to be able to lift and produce another quality heavy set. I think
Mm,
that's one problem a lot of people run into, like with women, let's just say like Gen Pop women that are coming from this place of like hit and classes and then you put them into something like this, they just want to go, go, go every
yeah.
30 seconds, which turns, it can change the workout. So very important to follow the rest. Like usually about 2 minutes, I would say, if you're trying to produce like a good quality RPE eight,
Mm,
so definitely 2 minutes. I mean, again, individualized, but that's
yeah.
I think general.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so true because I think it's like and again dependent.
Yeah, everything
Depending on
depends,
who you are,
right?
what you do. But it is so true because I always tell because I started training a lot of geriatric clients since
Okay.
being in California, which has been really fun, right? And I'm
Yeah.
sure you've had like your share
Yes.
too. But one of the biggest things I've sort of taught, mostly my actually, no, all of them, because most of them are just started lifting at like either 70, 80, 90, right?
Mhm.
Which is really cool. But that's like one of the biggest things I'll say is like they'll do a set and then, we'll chat for like 30 seconds and they'll go to start their next one. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, oh,
Right.
we're doing 3 sets, right? It's like, yeah, but how was that set, right? So kind of one of the things to simplify for people is I'll say like if you're supposed to do a harder set, right, and you're able to go in your mind in 30 seconds, it really wasn't a hard set, probably, right?
Right. Just like if you want to work out 6 days a week, like same concept. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe think about how hard you're pushing because you probably shouldn't want to work out that much. Like
Right.
maybe because you like it, but
Yeah.
probably aren't. You probably need to be pushing harder.
Yeah.
Workout, workouts. Then you're like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to my day off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yes.
really looking forward to that. So
Well,
same concept, yeah, for sure.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Walking. I'm looking forward to my Wednesday walks. That's what I
Yeah, totally. Me too. Same.
like.
Yep.
1000%. Well, that's all. I have one more question for you, right?
Okay.
So it's the last question I ask anybody on my podcast, and it's basically the reason I named this podcast These Little Moments podcast is because I don't remember if you were at Jordan's first
No,
seminar. No, okay.
no,
Um, so basically were you at the second one at all? Have you gone on?
no. It was
Okay,
COVID,
so
I
here's
think.
brand new
Yeah. Yes.
So usually at Jordan seminars, at the end of them, like you go through all the trainings and all this stuff. A lot of people, start to talk about their own experience and gets very vulnerable and very deep. So
Mhm.
for me, my big little moment that kind of shaped my trajectory of where what I'm doing now and how I feel and think is I kind of spoke to people and talked about my mental health for the first time. So it was like the first time I told people about my anxiety, my depression, all these things that I battled with. And it was this little moment that really stuck with me and allowed me to be vulnerable and build off that. Is there a moment in your life that you can kind of think back on and think this is what sort of brought me to the person I am today, uh, sitting in that chair right now?
Jeez, that's a loaded question.
It's very low. It's an RPE 10, baby.
I mean, I think, just always staying humble and staying true to who you are,
Hmm.
staying humble and being authentic. I think just is something that I've really like been learning recently, like especially working with so many clients, like
Hmm.
loving what I do because I'm actually able to just be my authentic self, like teaching
Hmm.
people about my experiences and how I might be able to help them. So again,
Hmm.
staying humble with my education and kind of staying the course and like just want to keep learning and then also just being authentic and being true to
Hmm.
me,
Yeah,
basically.
absolutely. I love that. Is there a moment you felt like you had where it was, am I being my most authentic self and where you had to transition, or was it something where you like since birth, Kelly Mack was you get what you get, right? Like what you see is what you
No,
see.
I mean, I think it's all recent because I've been in therapy myself,
Oh,
and
congrats. Let's
yeah,
go.
yeah, thanks for about over a year,
Let's
and it's
go.
been so awesome. I mean, you can understand. So just
Yeah.
kind of learning that to stop second guessing myself and just
Mm,
be who I am, and it's been such a nice like feeling to do that.
yeah.
I feel like it's coming out in like with my clients and just everything. So
Yeah.
it's just an awesome feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. It is really cool when it almost feels like it, I guess one way that I would describe it feels like you're unlocked and it feels like almost like
Yes.
you could breathe for the first time, right? Where it's like there's no more weight on you. It's just like, hey, like this is me and this is how I
Yes.
feel, and I know that the people who I want to keep in my life will accept me and be open to that. And you kind of, like you said, it exudes from everything else you do, right? It goes into your training, it goes into your
Exactly.
relationships, your clients, right?
It's like, I mean, as cliche as it is, like you're woke, like
Yeah,
it's kind
yeah,
of
yeah. You are.
just like you're there, and it's such a really good feeling. So
Yeah, it
yeah,
does. It's huge. I love that. Well, I appreciate you. Where can the people find you?
Instagram Mac Fitness 305.
Let's go, baby.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on. We'll stay on just for a little bit to chit
Yeah.
chat, but I love you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Ryan.
you.
Love
Thank
ya.
you.
All
All right.
right.